Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 618, and today's date is March 17th, 2015. And for those people who are celebrating St. Patrick's Day, happy St. Patrick's Day to you. And the title of this episode is China Dumps U.S. Treasuries While European Allies Join China's Development Bank. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we've been talking about Greece for quite a while right now. Nothing has been resolved. There's still an ongoing battle with the ECB and Greece. And we can see right now that Greece needs cash. It needs money coming in to pay for its interest payments. And we see Greece needs about 2 billion euros by Friday in order to make the payment to the IMF. And right now it seems that the Greek Prime Minister Tsipras is going to be visiting Moscow on April 8th. After being invited to talk with Russian President Putin, and who knows, maybe he will hit him up for the funds they need, or make some type of deal where they can actually exit the euro. And what we're seeing here is that if Greece goes ahead and decides, you know what, we're done with the eurozone, we're just going to write off all this debt, we're going to go ahead and go with Russia, go with China. They're going to bail out the banks. They're going to lift the ban on food, on the agricultural products. And again, they're going to help us spur economic growth inside the country, get people back to work, and drive Greece to a prosperous future. Now, if this does occur, and people have been calling this the Tsipras virus, Italy and Spain will most likely follow if Greece exits the Eurozone. And this is coming from the Greek defense minister saying, yes, if Greece decides to leave the Eurozone, most likely, from everything he's been hearing, Italy and Spain, and I wouldn't be surprised if other countries look at this and say, well, wait a minute. First of all, the ban on the agricultural products have been lifted. They exited the euro. Greece is doing much better now. They wrote off their debt, and economic growth is occurring. This will spread throughout Europe. And we can see many of these countries that are in a depression right now, like Italy, like Spain, like France, like Portugal, and many others that are spreading to, they are going to look at this and say, hey, we should do the same thing. And this is what the Eurozone, the central bankers, are most worried about. They do not want this to occur. Now, here in the United States, everything here is one big illusion. They're trying to keep it alive. They don't want people looking around America. They don't want people to understand that people are on the streets. People have lost their homes. People have lost their jobs. And we can see from things and stats that are coming out, it's getting worse as time goes on. It's not getting better. It's not improving, even though they're continually giving us these fantastic statistical numbers. Again, these are just manipulated numbers they can do whatever they want with. If they don't want to count people, they don't, and the numbers look better. And this is exactly what they're doing. But right now, 1 in 3 U.S. families, they are now classified as the working poor. That means you are working, but you're still poor. And the harder you work, it doesn't get any better. You can't make more money. And we're starting to see this because as time goes on and as people lose their high-paying jobs from those corporations like Dell and Sony, and from the financial institutions like Wells Fargo, Bank of America, they lose their jobs in the factories, and they can't find the same exact work, or they've been managers in retail or working in retail sales, and they cannot find a job. They take a job that's lower in pay, which makes it harder to survive. And we're starting to see this spread throughout the United States. It's not getting better. It is actually getting worse. And for the minorities, it's 10 times worse. And this is coming from the U.S. Census Bureau data for 2013, shows that 10.6 million out of 32.6 million U.S. working families have incomes under the 200% of the official poverty level. And as time goes on, it is getting harder and harder for people to survive. I mean, if we look at the food stamps right now, what are we seeing? Well, the people that are receiving the SNAP program, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, we have seen that it has surpassed the 46 million for the 39th straight month in a row. It is not going anywhere, and actually as time goes on, this number is going to increase, because as more and more corporations lay off, people cannot find work. Because everything that we talk about, look at manufacturing, look at the real estate industry, look at the retail industry. If these unemployment numbers are absolutely true, and they show the state of the economy here in the United States, we would see a complete expansion of everything. Retail would be doing incredible. Stores wouldn't be closing. The housing market would be booming at this time. But what are we seeing? We're seeing the opposite happen. Factories would be producing because people would be buying. The Baltic Dry Index would be shooting up. We are not seeing that. And again, the Baltic Dry Index is the raw material that the factories use, but we are not seeing this whatsoever. When we look at the real estate industry, and I've been talking about this for quite a while, and we've been tracking it throughout each month. And every time we look at the situation, it doesn't get better. It's actually getting worse. Even though the corporate media and the government, they're continually trying to tell us that, no, it's fine. Real estate is supposed to be like this when it's in a recovery. We're supposed to be imploding. Yes, this is what a recovery actually looks like. No, it doesn't. A recovery sees an expansion in real estate. Builders are building more homes. People are going out to get mortgages. But when we started reporting on this and we started taking a look at the real estate industry back in August of 2013, we noticed, while Obama was out there in Phoenix letting everyone know that the real estate industry was in this recovery mode, we noticed that the major corporations like Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase, they were laying off thousands of people in their mortgage departments. The question is why? Because we've come to find out that people have not been taking out mortgages. And again, we have to look back to 2008. A lot of people foreclosed. A lot of people had short sales. The credit rating was ruined. They're subprime people. They can't find work. They're working at part-time jobs. They're not working at all. It's very difficult to get ahead, and it's very difficult to go ahead and say, let me go buy a house. So this is why we see all these programs starting to kick up. And when we look at the housing starts for February now, they have collapsed by 17%. This right now is the biggest month-on-month percentage drop since February 2011. They're down 184,000 units. So what do we have going on here? The real estate industry is imploding. Yes, they're going to try to blame this on the weather. But when we look at this, this is the single biggest monthly decline in absolute terms since January of 2007. The collapse was dominated by the Northeast, which was 56.5%, the Midwest by 37%, down 37%, and by the West, which was down by 18%. This is huge. Yes, I know the weather was bad in the Northeast, but how was it in the Midwest? It wasn't the entire Midwest. How was it in the South? It was down negative 2.5%. It's very sunny in the South. How about the West? We are seeing the implosion of the real estate market. Everything that we're seeing right now is leading us to the collapse. And we've been watching this, reporting on this, so we have a track record, so we can say, yes, we've talked about this. This is why we are here today. Now, Treasury Secretary Jack Lew is out there, and he's trying to convince everyone that the U.S. economic recovery is well established right now. And he's saying that everything is fine, we're on the right track, and everything looks good. He's also out there saying that he's telling the lawmakers to finally sign off on a reform of the International Monetary Fund that would give emerging markets a bigger say in global economic policy. Now, the U.S., the Congress said they were going to approve this back in 2010. This was the 2010 deal, saying, yes, we're going to give more of the voting rights to the emerging markets. So far, it has not happened. Now it's 2015. The reason for this is because they didn't want to lose the power, the voting power. and give it off to the emerging markets. So what happened? China, Russia, the other BRIC nations looked at this and said, you know what? If they're not going to do this, we are going to create our own world bank. And this is how this got started. And now Jack Lew is out there saying that, listen, we need to sign off on this because the situation is actually getting worse. And he's saying that it is causing other countries, including some of our allies, to question the commitment, the U.S. commitment to the IMF. And we can see right now, their commitment is to keep everything to themselves and to provoke war because the system is crashing. If they allowed other countries to have more voting rights, they know this would make the United States collapse in a matter of seconds. They don't want this to occur. And this is why they decided to go down this path, but it is backfiring. Just like the sanctions on Russia, just like the sanctions on North Korea, the sanctions on Iran, the sanctions on Venezuela, Brazil, Argentina, Cuba, it is not working because you know what? Every single country, they figure out how to get around sanctions. I mean, think about it. Cuba had sanctions imposed on them for 50-something years. It doesn't work. They didn't collapse. Everyone didn't just jump off the island and say, forget it. And they realized this after this amount of time that, yeah, sanctions do absolutely nothing. You know what countries do? Oh, we can't use the dollar? Then we will barter. We will use precious metals. We will trade you fighter jets for oil. They do all these other types of deals to get around the sanctions. And we can see that the European allies are looking at the entire situation of what's going on in the world. They realize the United States government central bankers are trying to push war. They see that if this war is started, it will be on their front lawns, and they do not want this to happen. And this is why I think France and Germany stepped in Ukraine, because they see the United States government central bankers trying to push war as hard as they possibly can against Russia. They also see that the dollar is on its last leg. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see this. You don't have to see that the dollar is collapsing. You don't have to really understand that much to see that something is going on. And we can see that Russia, China, they've been de-dollarizing, and now it appears that the de-dollarization is continuing with the European allies. And we see that what they are doing right now is they're moving in the direction of China. I mean, China has been making deals, bilateral trade agreements with many different countries. A lot of the countries now are keeping the yuan renminbi in reserve. And we can see that now, from the start with UK joining the China-led infrastructure bank, we see other countries now doing the same thing. We see France, Germany, Italy have agreed to join the development bank as a pivot to Asia. And because they see the writing on the wall. They know what's going to happen here. They know they need to protect their countries. And we see Australia was on the fence. Oh, we don't know. We're going to have to think about it. But as soon as the UK said, yes, we're doing this, Australia said, you know what? We're with you. We're going to do the same thing. Now, the US has to look at this and say, what in the world are they thinking? They better stay with us. But they're not. Because when something is collapsing, it's every man for themselves. And we see that each one of these countries are looking out for their best interests, not for the United States. The United States is going to end up isolated, even though they're trying to isolate Russia and pretty soon China. Actually, they're containing China. And that's what Obama continually says. But this leaves the Obama administration with three options. Continue to press its allies not to join the China's development bank, or have the U.S. join it itself. Well, that would be shocking, wouldn't it? And I don't think that's going to happen. Or just drop the issue and pretend it never even happened. Well, I have one more option here. Push war to cover up this entire collapse. Doesn't mean the collapse is not going to happen. Oh, it's going to happen. They're just going to blame it on other people, other countries, other groups. And while all this is happening, China continually is dumping the U.S. Treasuries. This is the 5th consecutive month that they have been dropping the Treasuries. They're shaving about $5.2 billion from its holding between December and January. And right now, the U.S. Treasury reported Monday that China reduced its holdings from $1.244 trillion in December to $1.239 trillion in January. And they're continually doing this. They can't do it all at once because it would just crash the system. So they're doing it very slowly. And of course, if they did it all at once, the United States would say China did this on purpose. This is why we have to go to war. And this is why they're taking their time doing it. And we have to realize that while China is continually doing this, who is buying up the bonds? Well, we understand the Fed, the central banking system, was pushing QE, and they were buying all the treasury bonds that Russia, China, and other nations were dumping. Now they've been spreading it out. Japan's picking up the slack. Belgium is picking up the slack. The banks here in the United States are picking up the slack and buying U.S. Treasuries. So has QE actually ended? No, what they did was diversify it out of the Fed. They're still funneling the money into all of these areas, but the Fed itself is not directly doing it. So QE actually really didn't end. And a billionaire, Sprott, is warning that mother of all collapses is coming if the central bank stops buying bonds. And again, as these countries continually sell, the banks around the country, Belgium, Japan, and other areas, they're all taking up the slack. Once they decide, okay, enough's enough, we're not doing it, and say Japan stops, say Belgium stops, we're not doing it anymore, we have a major problem. And pretty soon, the Fed basically is really going to own all these bonds. And no other nation will owe them. They're just going to drop all of it. Russia is continually releasing the treasuries, selling them back because they're trying to separate themselves completely. And Angela Merkel right now, looking at the entire situation, is moving closer to Russia. And she is looking to strengthen the cooperation with China. And they want to open up new opportunities, especially in the IT sector. Since China now has dropped a lot of the IT manufacturers here in the United States, Germany's looking at this and saying, you know something? We can step in right now and fill that void. So we see a lot of countries now working with China, and we see the United States is being left out. And all of this is occurring because the people in power, the government, the central bankers, their one objective right now is to continually prop the system up any way they possibly can by pushing the troops into different area and pushing the dollar on people by force if need be, which they've been doing for quite a while, and by trying to push war to cover up what is about to happen. And when I say what's about to happen, that is an economic collapse. And we're getting closer and closer to the situation. Now, I talk about Obamacare quite a bit, and we understand that Obama is out there and he's telling everyone, oh, look what I've done. I've insured more Americans, and less people don't have health insurance at this point. And when he's spouting out his figures, they're kind of wrong. I mean, he just spouts out anything he wants to. And the Obama administration basically lied on Monday, on March 16th, when it said that it had reduced the percentage of healthcare uninsured Americans from 20.3% down to 13.2%. The real figures are 14.6% reduced down to 12.9%. Because we have to remember, when Obamacare was first coming in, they dropped everyone's health insurance. This is where he's getting that ridiculous number. And he's saying, look at all the people that are uninsured, the 20%. No, they had insurance. He caused them not to. So really, he only brought it down but quite a small percentage. And that is because he's giving subsidies to a lot of people who can't afford health insurance. And we also see that people will get a penalty if they don't take health insurance. So basically, what has he really done? He's just forcing people to do something they normally wouldn't do because they don't have the money. Especially those people who are stuck in that middle income bracket where they can't get the subsidies but the health insurance is too expensive. He's kind of forcing those people into the health insurance industry, which they could probably use for food and for other things, but they're spending all their money on health insurance, which most likely they will probably never use at all until they get much older and they actually need it. Because most of the policies have huge deductibles and they still have to pay for the premiums and pay for the health insurance when they go to the doctor. The only time it really kicks in and it's real benefit to anybody is when you have a catastrophic problem. And we can see that he promised back in 2008 that his plan, the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, he was going to reduce the uninsured rate down to 0%. And guess what? It did not happen. Actually, it is very difficult to force every single person onto health insurance, especially when they don't even have the money. They'd rather take the penalty at this point than go ahead and pay for the health insurance because it's a lot cheaper. Now, I want to take everyone back in time to when Obama was running for president, and right after he became president, how the White House press secretary Robert Gibbs said the following. And this is back in October of 2009. Understanding what this president has done is institute the very toughest ethics and transparency rules of any administration in history. I think the president has returned to a stance of transparency and ethics that hasn't been matched by any other White House. The president believes strongly in transparency, the transparency in that way in the best policy. And the reason why I'm saying all this is because the White House did something very interesting. They decided to void the federal regulation that subjects its office of the administration to the Freedom of Information Act. So when a request comes in now, they do not have to hand over anything. Now, it's very interesting. This just so happened during the period of Hillary Clinton's email scandal, where she had a private server. And I'm sure a lot of the government people have a private server because they don't want people looking into all the things they're not supposed to be doing. And we can see right now, this administration is moving further and further away from the people, from the Constitution. And it's becoming a secretive government entity where there is no transparency. Do I believe there was transparency before? Not at all. Everything was not transparent whatsoever. And now we can see the situation is actually getting worse. I mean, this is completely out of step with the president's supposed commitment to transparency. This is a critical office, especially if you want to know, for example, how the White House is dealing with email, for instance. This office has operated under the Freedom of Information Act for 30 years. And now, all of a sudden, they decided to shut it down. I don't think they should be allowed to shut it down. I think there should be Freedom of Information Act on the entire government. Because there's nothing in the Constitution that says the government is allowed to keep secrets from the people. The people give them power. The only reason they're there is because of us. And we need to know what is going on. Because as we can see, there's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of things that these people are doing behind closed doors. And they're pretending that it's all for the betterment of the people. Well, we're starting to find out what basically we knew for a long time, that mostly everything they're doing is not for the betterment of the people, for the country. It is the betterment for themselves. They're the ones who are benefiting from the actions they are doing and not the people here in the U.S. They might be in this illusion that they are working for the people, but you know what? They are not. They wouldn't have to hide something. They wouldn't have to set up a private email. They wouldn't have to get rid of the Freedom of Information Act if they were on the up and up and doing things for the American people. And we can see right now that what we are seeing right now is the next step in closing down an open society. We are headed in this direction, and we are going to continually head in this direction. Now, we talked about this before. We understand that the FBI, local police forces have these cell towers, these airplanes that go over that spoof a cell tower and get your information. You have no knowledge of it whatsoever. And we can see the Central Intelligence Agency played a critical role in helping the Justice Department develop technology that scans the data from thousands of U.S. cell phones at a time. It was part of their secret high-tech alliance between the spy agency and domestic law enforcement, according to people familiar with the work. The CIA and the U.S. Marshal Service, an agency of the Justice Department, developed this technology, and we can see the local police around the country are using it. They don't want to tell people that they are using it, and we can see that the police force right now is basically being used by the federal government because they're taking control of all the local police departments. They want the local police departments to spy on the American people and report back to the federal government. And they're doing this because they need more eyes and ears around, because they understand that when this system comes crumbling down and the people are sideswiped and they don't understand why this is happening, many of the people are going to get together. They're going to form groups, which has been happening now, mostly on the internet, where people like myself are out there telling people this is what's really going on. We should take a look at this. And then as time moves on, we will see this turn into marches like we've seen in other countries, where millions of people come out and they protest the government, say, you are not working for us. And this takes time. It doesn't happen the next day, because a lot of people are still sleeping. People are not awake. They don't understand what's going on. They're still drinking the Kool-Aid. They still think that the corporate media is telling them everything they need to know and what's going on in the world. And we see more and more people are waking up. More and more people are realizing that, wait, what we're seeing here is not actually the truth. It's more like propaganda. And as time goes on, the movement will grow, and it will move into different phases, and we will see this happen. And the government, they're very worried about this. They don't want this to go further, and if it does, they want to stop people. And this is why they're so worried about the people having weapons. They're worried about people getting together. They're worried about the internet, because there's a lot of people that can get together all at once at a short period of time. And they realize this, not just here in the United States, they realize this in many countries throughout Europe, that, yeah, we need to start pushing draconian laws to stop what's going on. And if you look, this is what they've been doing, because they're trying to control the situation. They are nervous that the people will try to remove them. And again, once a government official is in power, they never want to step down. They will fight to the bitter end to keep that power. Now, we understand that the United States government central bankers continually demonize different countries. And we see that all the players are the same. If you're not with the private Western Central Bank, then we're going to have to demonize you. You are our enemy. And we see this occurring with Russia. We see it with China. We see it with North Korea, Iran, Syria, Brazil, Venezuela, Argentina, and many other nations. And we can see with North Korea right now, they're continually pushing the propaganda. And right now, South Korea is out there, and they have accused the North of cyber attacking their nuclear power plant. And they're saying that this attack was allegedly carried out in December and have been described by South Korea's government as a clear provocation against our security. They investigated the incident, and yes, it totally was North Korea, because they can tell, and they saying that North Korea caused their reactors to malfunction, which supply was around 30% of the country's electricity, but failed to break through the control system. And again, as we know, the United States government central bankers use false flags, cyber attacks, whatever they possibly can, to convince a government that this other entity, like North Korea or some other country, is doing this to them. And we're starting to see more and more people come out to say, you know what, all these false flags, all these events that you see, they are ginned up by the government to push their agenda. And as we can see with Kaspersky and other antivirus companies, the code in most of these refers back to the NSA. And we're starting to see this more and more. Now, China now has surpassed Germany to become the world's third largest arms exporter. More than 68% of Chinese exports went to Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Beijing also sold major arms to about 18 African states. And we can see that wherever the United States is supplying arms, China is also supplying arms to the opposite people in that area. And again, what we are seeing right now is that China is growing. And we can see that their military is growing. Their currency is going to be looked at to become one of the reserve currencies. We see many of the European allies moving towards China, and this is not going to sit well with the United States government central bankers at all. They are going to look at the situation, and they are not going to let this happen one way or another. I mean, they've already started with a regime change with the umbrella protests, and they're going to continually try to do this in China. And now we kind of understand why Obama has come out and said we are containing China, because they knew eventually China would start to grow. They knew what their plans were. They knew what they were going to try to do, and a lot of the countries were going to look at the situation and see that, yes, the U.S. is collapsing. We better protect ourselves. And we can see that they've contained them militarily in the Pacific. They encircled them, because the only way the United States knows how to deal with these countries is by force, to force countries into doing things they want, instead of talking to them, instead of having a dialogue and trying to come to some type of an agreement. Instead, all they know is push the dollar out there, make countries take more debt so we can steal their natural resources, and if they don't agree, we'll just go in there and do it by force, either by a regime change or bringing military in there and having a military operation. Look what's going on in the Middle East. They're doing this by force to kick the people back, because they do not want all of these countries falling. It would completely destroy the petrodollar system. And actually, we see it is on its way, where more and more of these countries are overrunning the puppet governments and kicking them out, and the dollar is collapsing. Now, out in Ukraine, we understand that Poroshenko right now is skirting around the Minsk II deal. He doesn't want to push this forward. He doesn't want to show that he's abiding by it, because if he does this and he goes full-fledged into the Minsk II deal and follows each one of the steps, it's going to be a problem getting the war started. And he's taking his instructions from the U.S. government central bankers. And we can see that he's trying to stall, and he's not trying to move too fast in completing any one of the steps. And if he stalls any further, the U.S. government might come in and say, listen, we told you to start the war. What are you doing? Set up a false flag. And if you can't do this, we're just going to remove you from your position. We've done this with many other leaders around the world. Look at Saddam Hussein. Look at Gaddafi. So if you don't cooperate, you will be removed if you do not do what we say. Now, we also see that Kiev right now will not deal with the Donbass region until they have elections under Ukraine's law. This is a stall tactic. This was not part of the Minsk II agreement whatsoever. And we can see they're doing this on purpose. And they are doing this because they know they need to start this war. At the same time all this is happening, Russia is having combat readiness drills. Now, to stop the propaganda of Russia's ready to invade Ukraine, Russia decided, you know what? Out of good faith, we're going to notify the Organization of Cooperation and Security in Europe, the OSCE, before this occurs. So they know we are planning a large-scale SNAP combat readiness exercise in advance. Now, they didn't have to do this, but they knew the propaganda was going to be running wild. They knew NATO was going to be out there, the U.S. was going to be out there, Poroshenko was going to be out there, telling everyone Russia is invading. Look at the tanks, look at this, look, they have troop buildup. They've already told them in advance they're having another drill. The total number of these forces stands at about 8,700 servicemen, 40 tanks, 400 military armored vehicles, 100 artillery systems, and over 100 millimeters, 70 military planes, and 30 helicopters. During the snap combat readiness drills by the armed forces, strategic Tu-22M3s will be deployed to Crimea. And all of this is going on at the same time the Minsk II agreements are happening. Now, we understand that the United States government, central bankers, and NATO are having their own drills in Estonia and other countries in the Black Sea, and this is all going on at the same time that Russia is having their drills. Basically, they're flexing muscles back and forth to show, look how strong we are, look how strong we are. That is what's going on. And every time Russia has a drill, NATO, the U.S. always come out and say, look, see, they're building up troops. They're ready to go in. And then you get those black and white satellite images which show absolutely nothing to convince the people that they are invading when basically they are not. And they're trying to head this off by telling the OSCE. Now, we see that Kiev wants more pressure on Moscow. They're saying they want more sanctions. They want more pressure. Why? Because they want Russia to return Crimea. And with more pressure, Russia is going to say, you know what, you're right. There's so many sanctions on us. There's so much pressure. Here's Crimea. We're sorry we've taken it. And we know this is not going to work whatsoever. Basically, the pressure, the sanctions are being used to provoke Russia into doing something. Now, Russia is out there and they are urging France and Germany to intensify work on implementing the Minsk Accord. Now, you remember how France and Germany and the U.S. and NATO were all at Russia to say, you must uphold the Minsk Agreement? Well, now it's the opposite way. Since France and Germany weren't involved, Russia's out there saying, listen, you're involved now. You see what's going on. You need to go in there and talk to Poroshenko, to Ukraine, and get them to abide by the Minsk Agreement. And we can see that, will they do this? Well, they should, because they're involved. They help with the Minsk II agreements. They were there at the meetings, and they need to go in there and do this. And the law on the special status that has been passed, this bill is an attempt to reinterpret this status to make it conditional on elections in the southeastern regions, which basically is not part of the Minsk agreement. And they want them to go in and say, listen, this is not part of what we decided on. And again, we're going to have to watch this to see what occurs, because again, now the pressure is on France and Germany, not on Russia. But it doesn't really matter. They're going to end up turning this whole thing around and blaming the southeastern people and Russia to start this offensive, because the central bankers paid for the entire country. They don't know anything else except war. And we see already that Biden has his son in there. Kerry has his friend in there. The Ukrainian government is selling off the gas pipelines except to Russia. And everything is going forward. We see companies like Monsanto buying up land there. The central bankers who are continually putting the country into debt will start buying up land and other natural resources for penny on the dollar, because they won't be able to make their loan payments, and they're going to destroy the country, and it's going to be privatized. And this is what's going on there right now. And it's not going to get better anytime soon. Actually, it's going to get worse, because again, they know no other way, and they understand that they have to start this war. Now, out in the Middle East, we understand that Yemen, Libya, Lebanon, Iraq, all the people in these countries are pushing out their puppet regimes. Yemen and Libya have done this already. And we can see the Libya's internationally recognized government, which is not really in the country, who is trying to rule with really no power. The people have the power. They're in Tripoli. They created a parliament. They are saying right now that any sale of the country's oil should be arranged through a state firm based in Benghazi under its leadership to prevent fraud. Because what's happening right now is the people of Libya, they are selling the oil, not using the dollar. And the puppet government, which is controlled by the U.S. government central bankers, they want this stopped. Now, we talked about this before. When this started to occur, the United States government central bankers are going to make their move. And believe me, right now, we have seen the buildup of them getting ready. We see France and the United States setting up bases outside of Libya. We see military assets being brought in. And we see Egypt and other forces getting ready to go into Libya. And Italy. I should mention Italy is also involved in this. And we can see that they will not stop. And as this continues on, and the people in Libya do not listen, the invasion will occur. They're just waiting for that authorization of war, which is still pending in the Congress. Now, we understand that Kerry was out there and he talked about having negotiations with Assad, and then the State Department came out and said, absolutely not. We don't know what Kerry's saying. This is not what's going to happen. Jen Psaki was out there saying, yeah, I mean, we might talk to representatives, but we are not going to talk to Assad. We would never. It's not going to happen. He's a dictator. We cannot work with him whatsoever. And from all of this, we're starting to see the U.S. government start to crumble apart here because it's not cohesive anymore. We see 47 senators which receive campaign donations from AIPAC, which now have their allegiance to Israel. They're working for a foreign government. We see John Kerry going off saying that we will have negotiations with Assad. We see the Obama administration saying he's out of his mind. We're not going to do this. And all of this is no longer in tune. Each part of the government is going off in different directions. And the question is, it seems that the State Department cannot seem to agree on any of the policies anymore. Congress is not working for the people. They're working for the money. And whoever supplies the money, they're working for them. So we can see right now this is a rogue government. It has lost all credibility whatsoever. They all should be removed at this time. Now we see the United States government central bankers are making another attempt to get into Syria. They have a posted video of children suffering from suffocation, and they're saying that this was chlorine gas. It was used by Assad once again. And we have to remember, just a couple days ago, we had a report that the Islamic State was using chlorine gas. And this was shown once before because we know the Islamic State is a proxy army for the United States government central bankers, Israel, UK, and other nations. Just like the Free Syrian Army back in 2013 when they used sarin gas, they blamed it on Assad, but all evidence pointed to the Free Syrian Army. And it turned out that, yes, they had a whole cave full of sarin gas, and the trajectory of the missile came from the Free Syrian Army position. We're seeing the same thing occur again. They're using the same exact tactic. They're not even changing it up. The only thing they changed was the type of gas because Assad has no more sarin gas because it's all gone, so they have to use chlorine gas. And we know the Islamic State has been using chlorine gas, and now it seems that they're setting up Assad once again. And every time you see this, you know it's a false flag event because the question is, why would Assad do this at this point? It makes no sense. He has nothing to gain by doing this, by killing his own people. What does the Islamic State and the United States government central bankers have to gain? They have to gain is feeding this to the UN, to the corporate media, to have an invasion inside Syria. And this is what they have to gain, and it seems that they're doing the same exact thing over and over, trying to get a different response. And you know the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and trying to get a different response, which you never do. And this, again, is not going to work. Now, Judicial Watch has obtained records from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement that indicates Al-Qaeda terrorists who helped plan several U.S. attacks, including plots to bomb Oprah Winfrey studios, detonate nuclear devices in multiple U.S. cities, was a confidential source informant of the United States government. And we've seen this time and time again, and we've always known that all of these false flags that we are seeing right now are created by the government to make the people do what they want. And most of these people are patsies, informants, which they pay to have this done. And we're going to see more of these events occur as time goes on, because they're putting in place the main event that will help take all eyes off the central bankers and place it on Russia, China, the Islamic State. And we can see this is what they've been planning for quite a while. Now, we know that the Islamic State is a proxy army, and we've seen in the past that the United States government central bankers have been dropping weapons, ammunition, supplies to the Islamic State, and we're seeing helicopters do this, we're seeing planes do this, and there was another plane drop of ammunition helping the Islamic State once again. And we can see that this is being done all the time now. Actually, right in the open. I don't even think the United States government central bankers even care if someone notices, because they're getting so desperate to start this war, it doesn't even matter at this point. And we can see the authorization for war is still pending in the Congress. There's no movement. And we can see still in Saudi Arabia, the embassy has stayed closed for another day. It looks like they might be planning something in here to push the authorization of war. Now, if it's not in Saudi Arabia, it will be in another location, or maybe even the United States. But we're going to have to watch the situation. It's very interesting that the embassy has stayed closed now for 3 days, and we'll have to watch this to see what occurs. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.